This nonsense that the government can dictate the limits of your faith, of your conscience, is as blatantly unconstitutional as anything that has ever been hoisted upon the American public. And that's why the decision that we anticipate from the courts on same-sex marriage is not a decision about same-sex marriage. It is ultimately a decision about religious liberty, and whether your church, your pastor, the florist, or the baker, or the caterer, or the photographer in your community can live according to his or her conscience. Because if that person cannot, then we have eradicated religious liberty, and we have done it for the sake of a vocal minority who have been able to establish something as a civil right that is not in the Constitution in any place whatsoever. Somebody might have saw that I was pretty dry, I guess.
This next question is from Jocelyn McKenna. What is your opinion on raising the federal minimum wage or providing incentives to businesses who make that decision in-house?
The best way to raise the minimum wage is to create an economy where businesses are able to pay people better. My experience is people pay according to what they can, and they want to keep good employees. I'm happy for the Democrats to champion the minimum wage, because I want Republicans to champion the maximum wage. I'm happy if the Democrats fight for people to live at the very bottom that the government will allow them to have. I want to fight for people to live at the top of where they can be. If minimum wage is the best they have to offer, let's bring it on. I want to ask somebody, if $10 an hour, is that adequate? Can you raise a family of 4 on $10 an hour? On 12? And they'll probably say, well, no, not really. Well, then why would you let the Democrats cheat you into something that you admit you can't live on? So let me ask you this. What would you like to earn? Well, gee, I'd like to earn $20 or $30 an hour. All right, let's find out what jobs pay $20 or $30 an hour. Let's get you in school, get you enrolled, and train you. Maybe it's a finished carpenter, it could be a plumber, it could be a registered nurse. Some of those jobs pay far more than $20 or $30 an hour. My gosh, in North Dakota right now, there are welders starting at $85,000 a year. This presidential gig doesn't work out for me. I'm going to weld in North Dakota. This nonsense about that we've got to arbitrarily and artificially pay somebody and that's going to give them a better life. What gives them a better life is when we ask them, what do they wish to be? How much would they like to earn? And match what their dreams are with the means to get there. And when they work and study and prepare, they will get there. And they will be living not the minimum wage, but the maximum wage. And that's how we ought to be communicating to America.
Thank you. This next one is from Dave Erickson. How do we get politicians to live by the same set of rules, for example, health care, as everyone else?
One thing, every law should have a mandate that no member of Congress or the executive branch, or for that matter the judicial branch, could pass or interpret a law that is not applied to them equally. The other thing to do, we should make it very clear that there's a limit of how long a person can stay in a job. We already have term limits on the executive branch. We should have term limits on not only the legislative branch. Let me go a step further. We should have term limits on the judicial branch. People shouldn't be. Now, to those who think it's controversial, I'm in pretty good stead there. Thomas Jefferson believed the same thing. He didn't win because people in the early days of our country never thought anybody would take a government job for the rest of their lives. Boy, on some things they really missed it. You know that 6 out of the 10 richest counties in America surround Washington, D.C. Think about that. They don't make anything there. They don't create or innovate anything there. They just create government. And if 6 of the 10 richest counties in America are there, it's because somehow government has created for itself an incredible nest that you pay for. The only way to fix that is to make it so that Washington is no longer the Roach Motel, where people go in, but they never come out. They go in, and they have a limited length of time that they can serve. And I put a lifetime ban on members of Congress ever being able to lobby after they left Congress. They don't get to stay and work over their former colleagues, they get to go home and live under the laws that they have hoisted upon you. That's a better way to handle the future of our government.
And this next question is from Molly Tedesco. Do you have a plan, a real plan, to curtail the $18 trillion debt? Please elaborate.
The fair tax is the fastest way that we can transform the economy for several reasons. There's $11 trillion of money, U.S. money, parked offshore right now. It's being hidden from the tax system legally, frankly, honorably. It's not some horrible thing that the president thinks we should punish. The reason it's moved offshore is because people are trying to protect and save and make sure that they protect their businesses. What do you think would happen if $11 trillion of working capital came flooding back into the United States? That's just U.S. money. Imagine the foreign money that would also follow invested in the United States if there were no tax consequences, if people weren't going to be punished for bringing it here and investing it here. Do you think that would make a difference? What do you think would happen if people got their full paycheck rather than only part of it that the government didn't confiscate through the confiscatory taxes that is already taken out of everybody's wage? We cannot cut our way out of an $18 trillion debt. Neither can we tax our way out of it. Taxing our way destroys our economy. Cutting our way destroys even some of the essential functions of government, such as the military, that we can't live with. The only hope is to grow our way out. If you've seen the last numbers, the GDP is growing at a negative rate. It's devastating. Slowest recovery we've ever had. And I keep hearing the president say, we're in recovery. Well, let me tell you something. I meet people every day in America. They're not in recovery. People who sweat through their socks every day, they're not in recovery. People who work harder today than they worked a year or 2 years or 5 years ago, and they got less to show for it because many of them used to have a full-time job that gave them good wages, benefits, and a pension plan, and today they're working 2 part-time jobs that pay them less than the full-time, and they don't have any benefits anymore, and they sure as heck don't have a pension plan. What happened? If the economy is in such great recovery, why is that the case? The Republicans, of all people, just gave the president more authority for him to negotiate a trade deal. 74% of Republicans in America were against it. The people who voted on it didn't read it. We sent this Congress up there to curtail the president's executive overreach on immigration and on Obamacare, and they went up there and gave him more power through a trade agreement that will move the governance of trade to an international entity. Now, I bring that up because there's an interesting provision. We're told, we're promised, this is going to bring great prosperity and great wealth to the country. If that's so, how come a provision in it had to be built so that we would set aside billions of dollars to help the people who will lose their jobs? If all these jobs are going to be created, why on earth do we have to create an alternate piece of the program that will pay for the people who lose their jobs? I thought it was going to create them. There will be wealth created. It just won't be for the people who used to lift heavy things and who used to work hard for a living. Those jobs will disappear because if we enforced a trade agreement, it would be a great thing. And I'm all for free trade. I am not for free trade when it's not fair trade, because then it isn't free. And when that happens and countries manipulate their currency and violate the trade deals with no punishment whatsoever, the result is that we get the worst end of the stick. And that's why 5 million manufacturing jobs have left this country since the year 2000, and 60,000 manufacturing plants have closed since the year 2000. I want some people who will work for the working people of this country rather than just work for the investor class. And Republicans deserve better than the leadership that we've had that sold us out, gave more power to Obama, and somehow thought we ought to applaud them for it.
This is from Debbie Sundin. How do you feel a Netanyahu decision to suspend talking to the current administration until the P5 conference?
I know Benjamin Netanyahu personally. I've known him for over 20 years. My first trip to Israel was in 1973 when I was all of 17 years old. I've been going back. I've been there dozens and dozens of times. I was there 3 times last year. I've been there once already. I'll be back in August. Let me tell you a little bit about Netanyahu. He's got one of the most difficult jobs in the world. One thing he always, and frankly any prime minister of Israel, always was able to count on, and that is the relationship and the alliance with the United States. For the first time in Israel's modern history, since 1948, the Israelis are scared to death that America is no longer their real friend and ally. If I'm president, they will know, and the world will know, that we understand the unique relationship between our countries, and we know that they are the only real mirror of true democracy that exists between the African and Asian coast, and that it's imperative for us to stand with Israel. I don't blame the Prime Minister. I believe he is a Churchill in a world filled with Chamberlains. And frankly, his courage has been very welcome at a time when there hadn't been a whole lot. And his understanding of the threat of the Iranians is significant. We ought to be listening to him. But there's one thing I will credit Obama for doing. He's done something I never thought could be done. He has moved the Egyptians, the Jordanians, and even the Saudis, the Kuwaitis, and the Emirates all into an alliance with Israel. They all now have a better relationship with Israel than they do with the United States. And that's pretty remarkable, and it happened because all of them understand the Iranian threat. Our current administration does not. And the result is we have created an interesting, if not unholy, an unlikely alliance between longtime former enemies. But here's what I've challenged my Democrat friends. I've said, can you name any country on the planet, any of them, with whom we have a better relationship today than we did 6.5 years ago? Nobody can. Not even the strongest Obama supporters and biggest Hillary supporters, and I know a bunch of them. And they'll hem and haw and say, well, you know, they've worked really hard. I said, that's not my point. My point is these are the people, the smartest guys in the room. Hit the reset button. Just tell me which countries do we have a better relationship with. Not even with Canada, not even with the UK, certainly not with France. You can send James Taylor over to sing his greatest hits and it's not going to make things better. And certainly not with the longtime allies. Here's what we've done. Our friends no longer trust us and our enemies no longer fear us. And that is a dangerous place for America to be. And so not only with Israel, but with all of our allies, we need to reestablish a sense of trust. And let me just be clear. I think that for a long time, the conventional wisdom and policy of the United States, both Republican and Democratic presidents, has been a two-state solution, which says essentially two countries controlling the same piece of real estate. It is irrational, it is unworkable, and my policy would not be to push the Israelis to try to give up land for peace, because when they had given up land, all they got was less land and less peace. And it is a nonsensical arrangement, because if you have a partner in a peace agreement that doesn't think you should live and doesn't acknowledge your existence, it's pretty hard to come to term an agreement, which is not going to happen under the current circumstances.
How would you deal with ISIS?
Instead of sending a few hundred sorties, we should send thousands. And every time there's an ISIS truck, it would be obliterated by an A-10 Warthog. It would be very simple. There would not be trucks getting with supply lines. We armed the Kurds, which we promised to do, but we failed to do. We sent the arms through the Iraqis, who never even delivered those arms to the Kurds. They've had their heads cut off. They fought valiantly. They've never asked us to shed our blood for them. They've just asked us to give them the weapons that they could use to defend themselves. And we built an alliance among the Middle Eastern countries, and we would expect them to have skin in the game both financially and militarily. And we would make it very clear that it will be a very unprofitable exercise to engage in the kind of absolutely savage behavior of ISIS. You do not do that with the proverbial light footprint militarily. If you ever went to grade school, and I assume you did, there was a bully in your school. And the bully picked on the kids he thought he could beat. If one day a stronger kid than the bully took the bully down, he wasn't a bully anymore. You see, I have a simple view of how the military should function. Instead of decimating the military through cuts and sequestration, we ought to be building the military to its most awesome, unbelievably capable force that has ever existed. Because it is less likely for your kids and grandkids to go to war if we have an incredibly strong military than if we have one that is relatively weak. Our military preparedness is the lowest it has been since before World War II. We are in a vulnerable, dangerous position because we're not ready for a big fight. We need the kind of military that if somebody decides they're going to take us on, the outcome is absolutely certain, whether it takes hours or days, but it certainly won't take years, because it will be the kind of overwhelming force with which we approach the 1991 Gulf War, where we assembled hundreds of thousands of troops, and we went in short order with a clearly defined mission. We accomplished it, we finished it, we got out, and we celebrated the victory. We do not go in and use our military to build schools and churches, hold hands, and sing Kumbaya, and to somehow make playgrounds. Our military was designed and is created to be a fighting machine. We train people to be military warriors, not to be builders of institutions and serve meals. That's what the UN is for. And if the UN can't do it, let's quit giving money to it. In the meantime, build the military to an incredibly strong lethal force. And if somebody wants to test our resolve and our will, let them find out just how quickly America can respond, and let it be known that we will approach it in what I affectionately call the Billy Jack way. We're going to put this heel on that side of your face, and there's not one thing you can do to stop it. I don't mean to be flippant about it, but we are not going to be a safe world or a strong nation until the whole world is scared to death to poke at our military. And they would know that to do so means they lose quickly, and they lose overwhelmingly. Make it incredibly unpopular to ever want to be a part of ISIS.
Harold Minders is asking, what is your position on homosexuality?
On homosexuality or same-sex marriage, or on homosexuality? I don't believe it is a biblical norm. And so I have friends who are homosexual. I love them. They're my friends. I don't quit loving them because of what they do or who they are. They're my friends. And I will love them till they die. And I believe they will love me till I die. Has no effect at all on my friendship. I respect them. I've had people who are homosexual who worked in my office, people who have supported me in my campaigns, people who are even friends of my wife's and me socially. I have no animus toward anybody. For all those who think that because I don't support same-sex marriage, I'm a hater or a homophobe, you don't know me very well. But I don't hate anybody. Not capable. For the simple reason that how can I say I love God and hate somebody? I can't. This whole notion about, and it applies in any room. When I hear people talk about how do we resolve racism, it's, for me, quite simple. I can't believe that my race is superior to yours or anyone else's, because if I believe God made me and He made you, I don't think He made one of us better than He made the other. It's simply not possible. I don't accept the idea of a same-sex marriage, not because I don't like people, but because I believe the institution of marriage is something very sacred, unique, that is not just a human institution, it's a divine institution that reflects the very relationship of Christ and His church. For me, that's something I can't yield. It's not a political issue for me, it's a biblical issue. If that disqualifies me from your vote, then I'm sure there are plenty of other candidates that will be happy to have your vote. If that is something that you say, well, I can't vote for him because he would apply a biblical standard. Yes, I would. So just be aware of
that. Last question, very quickly.
Okay.
Litmus test for the Supreme Court.
A constitutionalist, a common sense constitutionalist. I hear people say, well, there would be no litmus test. Folks, that's nonsense. I mean, let me just be blunt. Every president appoints someone to a judgeship, and especially to a Supreme Court justice. He may not give them a questionnaire and ask them to fill out 20 different questions. But you don't knowingly put people on the court that you think do not respect the separation of powers and the balance of powers. Here's what I want to know. You ever read the Constitution, sir? Or ma'am? If you're going to be on my Supreme Court, I'd like to know. Have you ever read it? Tell me how many branches of government there are. Which one is the most important? Oh, they're all equal? Good for you, because that's right. Now tell me, does the judicial branch get to make law? Because if you think they do, you've just disqualified yourself. If you think they can interpret law, but it still has to be enabled by the legislative branch, the Congress, and executed by the President, then you perhaps are still on the list. But if you don't believe at least that much, then you're gone. If you in any way believe that your opinion overrides the other two branches, then you're not fit to be on the court, because you have a very unfortunate misunderstanding of how our system of government with its checks and balances works. Do you believe words mean something? Do you believe that those words should be respected? Do you believe it is the original intent, not the long-standing interpreted intent that is your goal to get to? And do you understand that if you come up with an interpretation that is disagreed to by the Congress and the President, that it is not their responsibility to surrender and capitulate to your decision, it's their responsibility to stand up against your decision and to say, thank you very much, court, but we respectfully disagree. Disagree to the point that we will not implement that decision because we believe that as the people's elected representatives, you, the unelected justices, have missed the boat constitutionally, and 2 overcome 1, and therefore we are not required to simply say it's the law of the land because you can't make law. And if a justice does not believe that and support that, it shouldn't be on the court. One of the reasons that I believe that the court should have term limits is because sometimes a person will serve and be appointed by a president who only gets 8 years. A Supreme Court justice can get 40, and that person has long since forgotten why he got appointed. And it's why somebody shouldn't be on there indefinitely. Maybe 16 years, that's twice as long as a president gets. I don't know what the length should be, but it shouldn't be for the rest of his life. Because some of us can't outlive some of these horrible decisions that the extreme court has made. So, Bob, thank you, and thank you.
Up here for a few concluding remarks.
Thank you, Vic.
Folks, once again, on behalf of the Marion County Republican Party, I'd like to thank all of you for coming. I would point out that the individuals for the other candidates graciously stuck around, for lack of a better term. I encourage you to take a few moments, spend some time with them, get to know their candidates as well. There's a lot of people here who want to earn your vote. Let's take democracy seriously in Iowa. And once again, thank you so very much for coming. Have a great evening.